Yesterday I asked each of you to draw me a picture of the moon. Why do we do that? Because we wanted to explore what the moon looks like and how we see it from Earth. Now, what did you notice about those illustrations when you compared them in your groups? Did they match your predictions? Or did you think they were going to be the same or different? And did your predictions match what you observed? I know I saw a lot of different things in your drawings. I saw some people drew a full moon, some people drew a half of a moon, and some drew that little sliver that looks like you can sit on and catch stars, or a big smiling chizzer cat. Those are my favorite. That is my favorite phase of the moon. Now that's the key word here, is phase. We're going to talk about the moon's phases. The moon's phase has to do with its appearance in the sky. It looks different at different times in its cycle, which is why each of us can have a different representation of the same object. And it moves in a very predictable pattern. And as it moves, the shape as we see it changes. Now, what causes these changes? Let's take a poll, true or false. The phase of the moon is due to the shadow of the Earth cast upon it. What do you think? It's false. Though many people think this is how we explain the moon's phases, it's not actually accurate. So let's take a look and see what astronomy discovered about the moon's movement and how it affects what we see on Earth. Now, we need to consider three primary objects when we think about the lunar cycle, which is the complete orbit, the continuous orbit of the moon around the Earth. We need to think about the sun, the moon, and the Earth, and their relative positions. Now, the sun is always illuminating exactly half the moon. However, as it moves in its orbit around the Earth, we see it from different angles. And we only see the part of the moon that is illuminated by the sun. Therefore, as it moves around the Earth, its phase or appearance changes. Now, for example, what you see behind me would be considered a new moon. It's not being illuminated. The side that we see is not being illuminated. It's the opposite side that's receiving all the sunlight. Now, this occurs when the moon, the sun, and the Earth are aligned in such a way that the far side of the moon is receiving the light, and the side that's pointing to us is not receiving that light. So then as the moon continues to move in its orbit, we get a slightly different angle and it gets more light, such as this. And we give each of these phases names according to how they look to us. Now this would be called a waxing crescent. Waxing means get bigger. So as the moon continues to move in its orbit and we get a different angle, it gets more light, we call that waxing. Now, for the next significant phase would be what's called the quarter moon. And that occurs when the moon is at a 90-degree angle relative to the sun and the Earth. And this is sometimes called a half moon because it's a half of the moon, but it's actually within the first quarter of its cycle. So it's called a quarter moon. As the moon continues to move, we reach full moon. And at full moon, the sun, the moon, and the Earth are aligned again. However, the moon is at the opposite side of the Earth, and it's the side that's receiving all of the sunlight. The part hidden from the sun is opposite of what we see. This is hidden from our view. We are seeing the side of the moon that receives all the sunlight, and this is the full moon. Then, as the moon begins to get smaller again, it's called waning, giving us a waning gibbous. Eventually, we'll reach a third quarter moon, in which case we see exactly half of the moon that's illuminated by the sun and exactly half that's in shadow. It'll continue to move around its orbit. We'll get a waning crescent, and then eventually back to new moon again. Now, and that's how we see that the phases of the moon is a result from the angle that the sun makes with the moon and how we see it from Earth. Now, this is just something to think about. We'll elaborate on your ideas later. But we know that the Earth spins on an axis as it rotates around the sun. Now, what do you think the moon does? Do you think that spins? And if so, how would that affect what we see? Think about that. See you tomorrow.